Hey folks, lovely to have you joining us and welcome home to the battlefield. What a week it's been for all of us. You now know what we know, that the all-out warfare of Battlefield is headed to 2042. So stick around with me, Freeman, hello, and some of the gang from across DICE. We're here with you for the next while we look back at everything that we've revealed this past week. Now, to keep things as safe and responsible as possible, we are pre-taping this live stream so that we can spend as much time as we can talking with you and taking you behind the scenes. But please do say hello in the chat. We're all watching live along with you from our homes. So, starting us off, I'm here with Oskar Gabrielson and Daniel Berlin, Design Director for 2042. It's lovely to see the both of you. I mean, Oskar, you're looking resplendent.
But look, we've had a year of working from home, right? And you can use that time in different ways. One, of course, to build an amazing Battlefield 2042, but you can also experiment with beards and, exotic haircuts. But Daniel and I have agreed, as we reach our next big milestone, I can finally drop this thing, so we just need to hurry a bit, that milestone, right? And then we should be all good, back to normal.
No pressure, Daniel.
No pressure at all.
So let's get started then. 2042, a brand new setting for us for Battlefield. This is exciting. What got us to this era?
Yeah, it's actually one of those moments I remember quite dearly. So I think it must have been 3 years ago now. We kind of headed up on the 11th floor at DICE, and we were actually supposed to look at the concepts for this next Battlefield game. And this time around, the team went quite wide. I think we looked at 12 different concepts or so. Some really unconventional things, some that took us back in time, some things that took us into the future. We looked at ripmatics and, a lot of concepts. And then we got to this thing that we called 2042. And we all looked at that, piece and kind of looked around the room. And we just kind of felt it in here. We found it. It was this kind of special moment of taking the best pieces of Battlefield 3 and 4, that notion of like modern warfare, and then spicing it up a bit with cutting-edge hardware. And some of that we've seen in the last couple of days, of course.
Yeah. And another big thing for us as well. This is the first Battlefield in many years for us where we're putting full focus on multiplayer.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big one for us. I mean, multiplayer is what we do best, and we've done best across now the 2 decades the Battlefield has existed. So, in Battlefield 2042, 3 core experiences. Of course, now we've talked about all-out warfare. We're going to bring back Conquest and Breakthrough on a bigger scale than ever. 128 players, some pretty cool big land masses to play on. And then we have more to update on as we get to EA Play as well.
Yeah, because there really is so much more to this journey that we'll be sharing with all of you. Let's get into the absolute nitty-gritty of things, though. Daniel, big changes to Conquest. As Oskar mentioned, big focus for us in this first section. Yeah. But Conquest has had some significant changes to meet this big new scale that we have for 2042.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it is a leap for us, right? And when we go to 128 players, and when you go to a larger play space, you can't just kind of copy what we've done before. We had to also kind of reinvent how we approach level design and how we approach pacing in the game. So what we're doing this time around to really encapsulate still the essence of Battlefield and the pacing that our players know and love is that we're introducing this concept that we're calling clusters. While watching the gameplay reveal, for example, we have this map called Hourglass, which is set in Qatar, which is really, really awesome. And this map really speaks to the new mentality around the level design, I think, and the clustering, because you can almost imagine it as a massive battlefield. But within that massive battlefield, there's almost multiple battles going on. If you go to the western part of this map, you'll find a huge stadium. And within the stadium itself, there's multiple capture points. And if you want to own the entirety of the stadium, that entire sector, you have to actually fight and control all of the capture points within that sector to capture the entirety of the stadium. But then you can, so imagine that you're in there with your squad and you're engaged in a close quarter combat situation and it's quite hectic, and then you manage to win. You capture the objectives in the stadium and go like, okay, whew, now it's a little pause, right? Then you run outside the stadium and you open up your maps and you go like, okay, where do we go next, guys? We see that they're capturing the Neon City on the far end of the map. And then you go like, okay, we got to get there. So you bring up your call-in tablet. You say like, okay, we need a transport vehicle. I need it over there. It comes down with a parachute, lands in front of you. Your squad hops in, and then you have a a traversal as you travel to this other sector, which is a sector full of skyscrapers, where you can zipline between the roofs of the skyscrapers as you fight for multiple skyscrapers. So it's this concept of clustering objectives into concentrated areas where we can have high pacing, but then also having different types of gameplay in these. And in between these spaces as well, you have vast open landscape on the Hourglass map, for example, the rolling sand dunes. And it's really cool for people that really love vehicle gameplay to be engaged in vehicle on vehicle type of combat in between these clusters. But there's of course also within the level design areas of our maps that is built for the infantry and vehicle mix. And in Hourglass, there's a perfect spot for this. If you go down south of the map, there's actually a quite sizable village down there, which has interior for infantry, but the vehicles can also roam the streets there, and it's a really good matchup in there. And in the center of the map there, you have these massive arches that is overlooking this highway intersection where this massive convoy has run to a stop, and there's lots of vehicles that have been abandoned and stuff like that. So lots of stuff is happening with Conquest, and with the level design in order to really bring out the scale and for us to really infuse more battlefield moments and just sandbox gameplay in general, I'd say.
Yeah, because this is very much just what we do, isn't it? Making these big maps. And I mean, we were talking earlier about how a lot of this new approach for us with clustering is very much inspired by the success we've had in maps in the past, like Goldman Railway we were chatting about earlier on, and Sinai Desert with the village that you kind of have there as well.
Perfect example.
This where a lot of that kind of comes from for you and the team?
We kind of tested the concept a couple of years ago with those games, but now we're kind of taking that concept and we're taking it to the max, basically. So it's been really fun for us to kind of test around these different types of setups and landing on something that we really like. But I think that it's important to mention with Conquest that like the freedom and access to the sandbox is literally at your fingertips. Do you need a vehicle? Okay, call in tablet, get it in here. Do you want to change out your customization on your weapon? Hey, the plus menu, just change it out on the fly. You don't have to respawn or anything like that. And the freedom of choice. Like, hey, I want to have close quarters. I go to the stadium. Hey, I want to have some awesome, crazy verticality. I go to the Neon City. I want to have, vehicle on vehicle gameplay. Let's roam the fields in between. But then we have breakthrough as well, right? In 2042, we're more separating the experiences and making them more distinct and leaning into the strengths of them to a higher degree, I would say. So while you have this, what we call varied pacing in Conquest, where you have this high octane combat situation in the stadium, and then the pacing goes down, and then you call in your vehicle, and then you travel, you talk, and you strategize. Should we attack the Neon City from the south, from the west? In Breakthrough, it's more like we take 128 players, and it's two teams, the defender and the attacker, and we compress them down to a smaller space. We say, like, now you're going to fight in this sector only. So Breakthrough is this experience where you go on this journey throughout the map, but it's just short time to action. It's just chaotic and crazy, but we're still leaning into the size here as well. We wanted to give you more tactical opportunity when you're playing Breakthrough than we've necessarily done in the past. So we still use the width of the map to a large extent. So if you find yourself spawning, running forward, just like, there's a meat grinder in front of me, lots of people dying here, lots of things going on. We're now going to give you ample space to flank around and then take other strategic opportunities as well.
Yeah, and it really is exciting. So many of the Battlefield fans that I've been chatting to since we revealed the game and then showed off gameplay last week at Xbox, they are really excited at these changes. But then, of course, there's so many new players who suddenly are really excited to find out what this is. And I think one of the best new things that we're really adding is that we're creating kind of new ways for people to get into the experience with our use of AI.
Yeah, I mean, AI has been one of those things that we've been kind of, cooking back at DICE for many years, and Battlefield 2042 is kind of the perfect timing with next-gen tech to introduce it. So in Battlefield 2042, you can actually kick off the game and play solo with AI squad members on a whole big team with AI members facing AI. And that's just a great way to kind of learn the basics of the game, mastering weapons, understanding how the vehicles and gadgets work, and kind of from there then graduating into a mix of both with like real humans in PvP and AI. And it's just a really good way for us to onboard new players, but actually even in regions where sometimes we don't have enough players online on the servers, we'll just fill that up with AI until everyone comes online, and we can have those servers full with only in Battlefield Mayhem 24/7. So it's pretty cool.
Going back to the maps, Daniel, they're big. We've obviously been able to show off one of them with Hourglass in the trailer this past weekend. But just in general, like to help conceptualize it for people, just how big are they? So like when we give these past references to some of our older maps, which are quite big, now we're at 128 players, like how much of a scale increase have we gone for on some of our maps?
There's not like a general number we've said like, okay, they need to be 2 times or they need to be 4 times or something like that. We just for same kind of staying true to the formula of Battlefield in the sense that some maps are smaller than others, but across the board things have increased in size because this is the nature of having 128 players and needing to kind of accommodate for that in terms of pacing. So it has grown in size, but we still have maps that are smaller than for Hourglass, for example, is one of the bigger ones we have. I think it's the second biggest one, next to Irreversible, which is the biggest one we built, and I think that one is 5.9 square kilometers, which is quite insane. But again, in that map, when you go there, we will have the same mentality of the like the clustering. So if you want to have the example you gave, Freeman, with Sinai Desert, with the town, it's like if you go into Reversible, there is a place there called the oil port, which is a really big industrial space with silos and also barracks for workers to live in, and different types of industrial buildings and stuff where you can still get that really high octane battle. And over to the side, there's also a big oil rig, which has a lot of close quarter combat. So it's that concept of choosing where you want to fight in this massive battle, basically.
And of those maps, obviously, we've mentioned 2 of them there, Hourglass and then Irreversible. But we're launching with 7 for our all-out warfare part of the game. Like, Oskar, which so far have you found to be the absolute coolest?
I have to say Kaleidoscope. Again, I'm a big kind of Siege of Shanghai fan from BF4, but Kaleidoscope is kind of that, but on steroids. Yeah. With both the wingsuit that we're introducing in the game, the grappling hook that McKay uses, and the zip lines. There's just some like awesome, gameplay that emerges from all of that when players are like flying between skyscrapers, right, left, and center. Must be one of the favorites. How about yourself?
Yeah, that is. I mean, I also love urban settings in that sense. It gives you that kind of almost like heat feeling when you're running on the city streets and ducking behind cars. Cars are the best covers in video games ever. They just break in fun ways, so they're awesome to hide behind. And of course, having multiple skyscrapers, having, up in the penthouse of the skyscrapers and fighting another squad that is in another penthouse and is ziplining in between. That's super cool. But yeah, I mean, my favorite, I like Hourglass a lot, the one we saw in the gameplay reveal. I just love the stadium and the Neon City and the town to the south and the arches in the middle and the rolling thunders in between. I think that's just so cool because there's so much variety in there. You can really choose how you want to play. But yeah, no, that we'll have to say that one. I don't know, maybe.
But Orbital is pretty nice.
Orbital.
Just waiting for the rocket launch. There's this like perfect space you can stand on and like to see the rocket launch. Hopefully no one shoots you when you're watching the thing because it's quite spectacular. Yeah. That's a favorite, right?
That is definitely a favorite. I like that a lot. I like the big open space in front of the rocket, which is kind of like a space where you can move in between for a lot of vehicles to do, but the infantry can move to the sides around it and go from building to building to building. But it also has a really cool other aspect because you have the launch site over here, but on the other side of the hill in the mountain, you actually have a cryo facility. And you can choose to like take the roads, or you can choose to kind of just run across the mountain if you want to. But there's also a massive tunnel that goes through. And I've been in some playtests where it's just, okay, we captured, the rocket facility, and now let's head down to the cryo plant. And we get into a transport vehicle and we hop in and we start going in that tunnel. It's just like, no. And then obviously you go for a turn. It's just like one of the playtests I was facing 2 enemy tanks. And I was like, oh yeah, that's it. And then boom, I'm gone. Yeah. So that tunnel is really cool. It's just a lot of cool moments and a lot of the gameplay spaces we built. It's difficult to choose which one is the favorite, to be honest.
I mean, it really is the most common thing though, because I ask this question of everyone across the studio, and it's It's always the same every week because we get to play test and we work through all of the different maps. Every week we discover something new that we love about these new ones. It's so cool. Of these maps, though, of course, they're more than just maps. They're very dynamic in their nature of them. We've obviously took a lot of inspiration from our past and looked, now very much at the new technology offered to us by Frostbite and the upgrades that we've done on all our engines. These worlds are a lot more dynamic now, Oskar.
Yeah, I mean, we've worked for a good 3 years now on some of these new weather and evolution systems. I remember in that first pitch when we talked about the game, maybe it was Daniel, maybe it was someone else from the design team said, like, wouldn't it be cool if we could throw like a real-time tornado onto the battlefield that could turn everything kind of upside down and cause massive destruction? And I think everyone was sitting there kind of nodding. We looked over at the tech team and they're like, oh, are we supposed to make this work? And then kind of a year later, we had that first prototype. And I remember us showing it to other team members like, okay, but that's pre-rendered, right? It just has to be fake. Can't look like that. And we were like, yep, it works. And I think, it started with, being a thing that would run like spectacle on the maps in massive ways. But now it's kind of one of the core gameplay drivers as well. I mean, you can actually use that big tornado to your advantage, especially if you strap on that wingsuit, just to kind of escape crazy situations. There's just more of that. And then on Hourglass, of course, Sandstorm, pretty epic proportions.
Yeah, there's a massive sandstorm, a huge wall of sand that also passes by. I think one of the things that I really love about, the tornado is just physics are fun in games, right? And this is a big kind of like physics entity just moving across the map, and you don't know where it's going to go. It doesn't go in the same path every time. You don't even know if it's going to show up, to be honest. And it just causes a lot of those, unexpected, fun physics moments where there's the scenario I described in the event where I'm running. That was on Orbital, and I was running from the rocket towards the rocket assembly building across that big open space. And of course I was stupid, so I was just like, I can run that, no problem. So I started running, and then I just started running, and then the shots are coming back. I was like, of course. I mean, I'm stupid. And I look over, and there's a sniper. He's not in a building. He's actually sitting on a little knoll over there. And he's taking shots at me. And I'm just like, oh, well, this is over. I mean, I'm just going to start to zigzag and do my stuff and try to survive. But the storm is actually somewhere else right now. But it happened to have picked up a transport vehicle and flung it up. And then it had flung it across the map. So I'm just running there. And all of a sudden, we just see and he just lands on the sniper. I'm just like, yes. That's because that's the fun, unexpected things when you introduce a lot of physics into a sandbox environment. So I think it's such a great addition to the sandbox, and that's really what we want with 2042 in its essence. Infuse the game with lots of new tools, and the tools that are modern, that are cutting-edge technology, and all that. So just push that in there and let players have a lot of fun with them, combining things and doing that stuff. That's the secret sauce, I think.
And it's not just the big flashy things either. There's lots of just small interactions we've built back into our levels now to give players much more agency as they kind of move about the space.
Yeah, we had those in Battlefield 4 as well, but we've expanded the roster there. So things like, hey, I'm holding this checkpoint, and I see that we're playing Breakthrough, for example, and I see there's tanks coming at us. It's like, oh, I'm going to raise the bollards. So they would have to have a teammate actually leave the tank or have someone else come in and lower them for you to be able to pass through and actually get to the capture point. And I mean, we mentioned all the zip lines. There are different types of gates and doors that you can lock down. There's bridges that you can raise, that you can lower on Kaleidoscope, for example. So we really leaned into the dynamic nature of the space and make it feel like you can interact and you can counter different type. Oh, there's an attack coming. Oh, I'm gonna raise the bridge, so now their vehicles can't actually pass and stuff like that. So I think the team has done a really great job with that stuff.
Yeah, that's the world then that 2042 takes place in. But if that's the world that we're playing with, what about the things that we're actually playing with in those worlds? So weapons, gadgets, vehicles, we've made some pretty big changes for 2042. The biggest of which that people have been chatting about is specialists and how that's kind of integrating with what we've done in terms of roles in the past. So Daniel, how are the specialists fitting into this world?
So the specialists are... So let's take a step back, I think, first, because we looked at this for quite some time in terms of what we wanted to do here. And we looked at a lot of player data. we looked at feedback, and we looked into like the internal sentiment. And there was a lot of things we can also see through the data specifically, that a lot of players chose their class based on the primary weapon that was available. Meaning you didn't choose necessarily a recon because of the gadgetry, but you actually chose a recon because you got the bolt action sniper rifles. And you didn't choose your class because you wanted to play a certain role. So that was the thing we wanted to kind of target with this change specifically. We wanted to bring the game into a space that when you choose which specialist to play with, you go like, okay, I want to play this particular role. So what we've done is that basically you have the traditional class, say recon, is more of a category now. And underneath that category, you have multiple specialists that has a gameplay role that is a recon gameplay role. But what we're also doing to kind of to bring this even further in terms of unlocking the sandbox is that we're saying take Casper for example. He's a recon type of specialist. His particular gadget that he uses, that only he can use, is the recon drone. But aside from the recon drone, Casper can bring a shotgun, a sniper rifle, an SMG, an LMG, whatever you want to put on Casper, you can put on Casper. You can put a rocket launcher on Casper to couple with the recon drone. You can put as a throwable. You can equip him with C4. So we get away from that space as well, where, as we kind of seen in previous games, where on certain maps that were vehicle heavy, you just saw pretty much one class being played, the one that can counter vehicles. But now you choose your gameplay role, and then we have a whole array of open gadgetry that you can just freely choose from. So we see a better diversity in terms of gameplay styles across all our maps when we're playing the game.
Okay, and we talked about Casper there. We showed 3 other of our specialists off in the past week. We've got Falk, McKay, and Boris. Your favorite of the bunch?
Oh, yeah, I always get into too much trouble. I'm a way too aggressive Battlefield player, so the grappling hook with McKay helps a whole lot. But there's something special, right, with Falk as well. Getting the opportunity to revive teammates, from afar. It creates these really unexpected moments where you're like, I can actually help that guy. And he can shoot the other guy in the back. You're like, yeah! And it's never felt so great to actually revive a person that kind of really help the team move forward.
Yeah, no, Falk is really good. I think that's going to be a really favorite type of specialist for people that were really into medic type of gameplay. But I think we need to just quickly mention that Falk sits under the support class category, and we're kind of categorizing support as a character that supports the teammates through ammo distribution or through reviving or healing. So there's multiple characters within the support category. Falk specifically has the pistol turret, like Oskar mentioned. So she can heal you at a distance, but she can also revive you at a distance. And she also has a particular trait, a combat surgeon, which means that when she does revive you, she brings you back to full health, which is something if someone else revives you, another type of specialist revives you, they won't bring you back to full health. So it really leans into that particular role even stronger and pushing that.
Of course, we have Boris as well, who's fulfilling an engineer role for us. First time we've had that engineer role back in quite some time.
Yeah, for sure. So Boris is a really cool guy. He has the sentry system as his particular gadget. And this is a sentry system that Boris can place down, and it will acquire targets and support you with supportive fire. But the key is that the trait that Boris has means that he needs to be close to the sentry for it to be able to actually be as effective as it can be. And it's also quite of a squishy gadget in that sense, because it's a perfect thing for someone like Casper, for example, who sits at a distance with his recon drone, because the recon drone can also fire darts of EMP. So he can actually fly over with his recon drone and shoot darts at the turret and take it out instantly, because it's weak against EMP. It's also weak against explosions. So there's always that rock paper scissors counter gameplay taken into consideration when we're building all these things.
Yeah. So that's our specialists, and plenty more specialists to show you guys before we get to launch too. But let's talk about the weapons. We've got a great selection of weapons already in the game, but there's a very significant gameplay change that we kind of lightly touched on earlier on. People would have seen it for the first time during our gameplay reveal this past weekend. The plus menu.
Yeah,
this is huge.
It is. It's one of those things where particular thing, I'd say. It was one of those things that, like, from a conceptual state, when it was on paper and just did, conceptual mock-ups of it, it was just like, ooh, this is pretty sweet. And then once it actually went into the game, so sometimes certain features you have to iterate on them, to get to a place where it's like, that's where it goes. But this one was just there. And we also done external feedback on it, and we've done internal feedback on it. And the general output is like, it feels like this is something that has always been here, and it should have always been here. It doesn't. So it feels like something that we should have done it a long time ago, almost. But in general, it means that, like, you're running around and you find yourself in a situation you didn't expect yourself to find yourself in, which is Battlefield in a nutshell. I ran around a corner and she was like, oh, okay, now I'm in this space, and that's not what I spawned with. So how do I counter that? Do I respawn? It's like, no. You can actually just take up your weapon in front of you, change out the barrel, change out the underbarrel attachment. You can change out the scope, and you can change out the ammo type. So you kind of change the way it plays completely. But there is still a range in terms of balance here, for example, which is important to call out, I think. And that's like, you can't have a SMG and turn it into a sniper rifle. An SMG still sits within its category of usage, but it can deviate slightly to either side, right? So the plus system is not going to be removing the need for weapon archetypes. We just make each weapon archetype somewhat more wide in its usage in that sense.
Yeah, and I'd say that there's a red thread that goes through the whole game. And kind of then we decided this early on in the game vision, right? This notion of like adaptability for players. Exactly. Given like everything that's happening on the battlefield, we need to give the players, the optimal amount of choices in real time. So plus menu is an example of that. The call-in systems, you can kind of drop in vehicles kind of at any time, but also that choice with the specialists, giving them the option to use any primary weapon or open gadget they wish.
Yeah.
And like just unlock loads of sandbox moments. Like in past Battlefield games, you were kind of stuck, to be honest, and the only way to kind of change your gear was actually more or less to redeploy.
Yeah.
And now you're taking these kind of real-time decisions, just creating a whole bunch of new mayhem, right? So it's a lot of fun.
And one of the best ways to take out a sniper, if you don't have a car being flung by a tornado for you.
But that's a good thing, though.
That's a good thing, but that doesn't happen every time. It's like if this happens now in the playtest, by the way. So if there's a sniper laying on a hill somewhere, and there's a certain range which you can call in the vehicles. You can't call it far, but if you're within a certain range, you can actually call in a tank that lands on them. So it's a good way to take out that sniper. Just he doesn't even know, and he's just laying there proning and sniping. All of a sudden, I called in a tank that just lands on his head and kills him. That's pretty fun.
There's so many gadgets as well to play around with. I mean, Oskar, you mentioned there we have open gadgets, but of course we've also got our class gadgets as well. Like, they really do amp up the sandbox nature of the gameplay.
No, so each specialist has its the gadget that is connected to them specifically, and then we have the bucket of open gadgetry. And the open gadgetry bucket is very varied and diverse, and it means that you can stick with a specialist and still, be eligible in every situation you find yourself in, because you can always be, okay, I'm going to be in this part of the map where there's a lot of vehicles. I can decide to equip some gadgetry that is good for fighting vehicles, even if I'm playing with, say, Falk, where my primary role is healing. I can still be a healer in a combat situation that involves vehicles and still be viable. And that's something that is new for Battlefield, and it's something that I think we needed.
Yeah, and the vehicles too. Not only have we just brought back some favourites, the little bird's back.
Yes, please.
We love to see it.
Yes.
But we've also took a really good look at the way in which we approach vehicles, because I think for some vehicles are a means to an end. You get in them, you fly from one point to another. But we've tried to focus more on what it is that all people are doing in a vehicle when you're actually using them.
Yeah, there was a notion in the beginning of the project where we said we want vehicles to be platforms for team play. So we want them to be enablers of great team play, and they've been so in the past, I think, but we just kind of touched upon it. So we're taking it further now with 2042, and that means that this different seats in a vehicle have significantly more roles available. You can have a particular seat in a tank, for example, that is a spotter seat. So your friend who's in the spotter seat, his or her job is to actually just spot. And there's of course, it's kind of a given with cutting edge technology and modern hardware. 360-degree turn turrets for gunner. I've missed it.
Yeah.
It's wonderful that it's back, and it's really cool. And there's many other ones. There's like anti-air seats. There's of course the driver seats and the gunner seats and different types of gunner seats, grenade launchers, rocket launchers. There's even one vehicle that can deploy mines on the go. So it's perfect if someone is pursuing you and chasing you, and you just put down some mines on the go and you see them blow up behind you.
Yeah, and maybe, I mean, we given the big Frostbite upgrade, we got a new physics, sub-engine as part of that. So I think that the level of skill that's now in the vehicles, just kind of driving the transport vehicles, controlling the tanks, it's really cool. It's a level of kind of, physicality we haven't had in our previous games, and a level of control that's, completely new.
It just feels better to maneuver and better to drive, and it's more fun to take them off some, take it off some sweet jumps, as you say. But I mean, the cool thing about vehicles, which I also want to mention, is kind of like when you're playing Battlefield, even if you're not a vehicle player, just being around vehicles is awesome. So even if you want to play infantry and you're running around an orbital, for example, and you're on your way to the rocket and you're an idiot like me, so you just try to run across the open space. Just seeing two transport vehicles, it's just coming around the bend and then being engaged in a high-speed fight just in front of you, you're a part of that moment, even if you're not driving the actual vehicle. And that's also those things we call battlefield moments. Sometimes they're big and they're bombastic, but just having that moment happen in front of you, it looks like it's a scripted moment almost, but it's two players just ducking it out in two vehicles. Having that is just such a great addition that you only get in Battlefield, basically.
And it really does make all the difference in the world when you're rising out above the stadium on Hourglass and you're looking out across the distance to just see jets and tanks just all over the place. It's great for Battlefield players who've been playing this franchise for a long time.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But we really are just scratching the surface here. There's so much more to tell you on the road ahead. Of course, the 22nd of July, we'll be there at EA Play to show the next experience that's coming to 2042. And then later, Hazard Zone. And we're keeping pretty tight-lipped on both of these experiences so far. But what can we tell people about Hazard Zone and what can they expect from it?
Yeah, Hazard Zone is really something that's taking kind of the superpowers of DICE, the Battlefield formula, to a new level. It's a high-stakes, squad-based experience. It's not your Battle Royale that you might be expecting. It's something new and a bit more contemporary, I'd say.
I'd say so. But I think it is important to call out that this is not a Battle Royale mode. It's something that we're building for Battlefield. It's something that we're building that is ours. But it is really built on those mechanics, those high-stakes mechanics that really builds tension as you play. And gets you like, those sweaty palms moments when you're just like, but it's also then, combined with squad play. I mean, we are a squad-based team play shooter. And I'd say there's no other space within 2042 where the choices you make in terms of what I choose to bring and what my friends choose to bring, what specialist is my friend playing, what weapon is my friend playing, what gadgetry is my friend playing, that has such an incredibly high importance in Hazard Zone when you're playing this game. So really, really tight squad play, really tight communication is important, and then built around those that tension builder, high stakes type of gameplay. So super excited to talk about this as we when we're allowed to talk about it. In a bit soon.
Another part of this experience, which again we've started to talk a little bit about, is live service. So we definitely are happy to talk to people about what our approach is so far. So what are we saying so far? So most importantly, we want to make sure that we take the best of the learnings we've had from the likes of, say, Battlefield 5, where we can keep all our players together.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big decision we made really early on in the project. We don't want to split our community in any way when it comes to gameplay content. So all of the new locations we'll head out to in part of live service, free for everyone as part of that. And then we are introducing a battle pass as part of our seasons. We've announced 4 seasons as part of the first year. Every season will also come with a specialist. The Battle Pass system has 2 tiers, the free tier and the premium tier, and all of your gameplay hardware you'll of course find in the free tier, and in the premium tier, cosmetics and stuff you can use to express yourself across vehicles, weapons, and your specialists.
Yeah. We'll have plenty more to say on that. before we launch the game. But stick around. We're going to take another look at our gameplay trailer that we debuted this past week at the Xbox Showcase. And when we return, we'll be back with more of the gang from across DICE to chat some more about Battlefield 2042.
Incoming fire!
Attention all squads. The Russian troops are falling back. Do whatever you can to secure the sectors. We pushed them back, but not far enough. Do not let them regroup. Hostile close! Hostile down!
I don't think I'm ever going to get bored of watching that trailer. But welcome back, folks. As promised, we are joined now by more of the gang from DICE. Joining us, we have Marie Buskar-Granlund, Associate Producer on 2042, Nicole Lee, Senior Game Designer, and Ferris Musmar, Associate Design Director. How are we doing, gang? You realise this is the largest collection of DICE employees that has happened now in, what, close to a year and a half?
Yeah, it's been north of a year, right? I think we met yesterday. Oh, it was a thrilling experience. Humans in the real flesh that can build video games even. It's pretty rad.
Yeah.
Did you have it on your game dev bingo card that you go back to making video games in your bedrooms? Was that something that you expected on your career path?
Something that we dreamed about, maybe. But yeah, it's been a challenging experience, but at the same time, it showed like a lot of positives of how the team connected to each other and that sort of stuff. And it's really nice to be together again, actually. Like seeing more of these guys' heads. It's kind of interesting.
Actual heads.
Yeah.
3D.
Rendered in real time.
Yeah.
It's good.
High definition.
Yeah, 4K and all of that.
We obviously just got to take another look at that incredible gameplay trailer that we showed off this weekend. Your favourite parts of this, because there's so much cool stuff happening in there, a lot of which is work that you guys helped to shape up. But Marie, like when you're watching that trailer back this weekend, like what was the big thing that got you smiling, just seeing it happen there on the big screen?
I think just seeing it all come together as a game, really like that you can experience for real. I think the last couple of months we have been working on this game so tirelessly, and just seeing it now just come together to the experience that we kind of envisioned from the beginning is just so thrilling.
Yeah. Nicole, did you have a favorite part looking back on it?
It's really when you're seeing all those vehicles in action at last, because previously, whenever you're looking at one of these kinds of trailers, you just go, okay, there's a bunch of infantry, there's some scattered vehicle action, and this time you have them out there in strength. And then you're seeing all that crazy action going on from high altitudes all the way to the ground fighting. Is just intense, and that's what I feel Battlefield really is.
Ferris, your favorite part?
For me, it was the tornado, actually, because I remember when it was first pitched, we saw it on the presentations. I was like, I'm not sure we'll be able to build this. But then when I actually see it in software, and now we're able to talk about it and show it to people, it's very exciting.
And it really is exciting as well, because like we had your story from earlier on, Dan, about how it changed the gameplay experience. But I mean, we all play our play tests, really regularly, and it is crazy just how many different stories we each kind of have about, these big kind of events that happen on the maps. Like, Oskar, you've certainly enjoyed your time wingsuiting around in that thing.
Yeah, I mean, for some reason, I start every single morning the same way. So I get up early, download the latest build. I then take my kids to school and daycare, and then I sit down and I enjoy a breakthrough round with AI. And there's always like a good 5-10 minutes of just wingsuiting for no apparent reason. More than that, wingsuiting is just pretty rad.
Love it. Let's get back into some more of the details then that we were chatting about just before we watched that trailer. So Ferris, we were chatting earlier on today about progression, because we've obviously taken lots of different approaches to it over the years, but with this, we've really tried to think about the best possible player experience, haven't we?
Especially now with the new move towards the specialist system, where the players can actually equip their weapons all over the different characters. We moved a little bit away from the class system. This allowed us to actually have more streamlined progression, where the player can progress all of their characters technically at the same time, because they're unlocking hardware that they can use on all of them, and they're unlocking vehicles that they can use for all of their specialists. So this helped us a lot, looking at it, looking at a way to streamline it, make it more engaging for the players.
Because that really is like the best part of the experience really now. Because when we rank up, previously you've, as a player, targeted that one thing. If I'm going to sit on assault or sit on an assault rifle class and try and work towards that next unlock. But now you find you're unlocking new equipment that it's making you change the way you think about some of the specialists you maybe haven't played already. You're making you think, oh, but if I use this now with this specialist, this changes the experience up quite a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's easier to make the jump. Like we mentioned earlier, we've seen in data from previous games that, like, when people have maxed out a particular class and they it's time to maybe jump to another class to play something, they go like, yeah, but I don't want to use this weapon type, so I'm just not going to. But this time around, with the new openness and the more approach to a sandboxy notion of the entire systems, it's easier for people to kind of just jump around and test different things. And if you really have a weapon you're proficient with and you like, you can bring that weapon with you to any of the specialists. You can just try it out. And I think that just lowers the threshold of trying out different things in general.
Yeah, it's certainly been that way for me. I mean, I've exclusively avoided the recon class because I'm just a potato sniper. But yet, historically, we've had so many cool gadgets and functions available in that kind of class and role. Like, Nicole, has it changed up your kind of play style when you're interacting with the different specialists?
I think absolutely, and especially I always like to talk about Casper. When you've got a motion sensor down there and you know there's someone in the area, your situational awareness changes, and you can play it both ways, right? On one hand, you can say, I'm going to take a shotgun. Oh, wait, recons don't normally carry shotguns. I got a shotgun now. Or SMG, and you just go in and you start clearing up a room. And then alternatively, if you're like up on a perch somewhere and you say, someone might go in the elevator over there, but I've got a really good perch right now with my sniper rifle. You just go, oh, there's a motion sensor telling me there's someone behind. You can solve a problem. So it's really a different approach to solving these kinds of combat puzzles that just show up from time to time. And I think that's a huge change, really.
And it's such a cool world as well that we get to play in. Like, we were chatting about it a lot earlier on, talking about it in relation to our maps and in relation to the characters and the way that we're kind of approaching storytelling in this game, because this is new for us. We've obviously had story and reasons to go to places in past games, but Like, how's it been now developing a Battlefield game where we're telling so much of this story of no-pats and this world that, you know, we're inheriting in 2042? Like, as designers and producers, like, is it changing your approach to the content that you guys make?
I think because this time around we also are trying to enrich the because we don't have a single player campaign in 2042, we're infusing the lore of the world via the specialists and via the surrounding elements that you have in the world, and we're going to take that even further during the live service. So it made us approach growing the lore of the universe in a very different way that is embedded in the gameplay. You're naturally exposed to the lore of the world as you're playing the game.
Getting an understanding kind of why you're there as well, and what this specialist that you're playing as, why they're fighting, is also quite interesting.
Yeah, because these no-pats, the non-patriated, they're each fighting for something, aren't they? Because, I mean, whilst this is, it can look like a bleak world, there's definitely a lot of optimism in these no-pats and everything they're fighting for.
Yeah, I mean, early on in the concept, we talked about the notion of hope and the notion of purpose, and a notion that's really filled with change. And I think we gotten the chance now to talk about some of the backstory to this game, but that's just really the tip of the iceberg. Just kudos to everyone in the narrative team, you know, back home. There's just so much work that's gone down into the no-pats, to the locations. And as we kind of jump into a live service now, there's a lot of secrets we haven't talked about so far, you know, behind all this world. So we're, you know, looking forward to taking our players on a journey to explore more about what's actually led up to 2042 and what's next.
Yeah. It is really exciting, this story, by the way. You'll hear lots more about it from us before we go on to launch the game. When you're looking back then at 2042 and all the work we've done so far, because, I mean, while it's crazy to think that this last week really has been the first time players are learning about it, we've been living with this secret now for quite a while. Like, now that we've reached this kind of checkpoint for us as a team, when you're looking back, like, what's the big thing that you're so proud of and so excited for players to be able to get to play?
I mean, there's so much to really talk about when it comes to this, but I'm always talking about the setting, right? Because you are really dealing with that kind of modern era where there's so many opportunities, and when you have new tech coming in, you can bring that all together. And when I talk about tech, I'm not just talking about military hardware. It's about all the other stuff you have on the processing side. We are able to deliver this in a game, and you're just having this experience that people across different platform generations are able to enjoy, and that's something I find that's truly exciting.
And then empowered, like, with the new tech as well, like, we were able to build maps on a bigger scale than before, that we were able to add all this, like, dynamic elements to them. That is quite interesting. And then combined with all the elements you mentioned and the hardware we brought in, like, the sandbox has expanded in a very, very interesting ways for us that maybe we didn't even foresee it to go to these lengths when we first started, actually.
Yeah, because it's amazing, like, because Daniel, you and the team obviously worked so hard to try and map out the experience we're going to build, but it's quite incredible, really, that the instant we start, more potential opens up for us, and we really must have evolved so much since that original concept when we sat down those years ago.
Oh yeah, no, it's evolved quite some, but I think that's also the nature of Battlefield, right? We always have kind of like a notion of like, okay, these are the tools that we're going to give you, but we know from experience that every single game we release, there's combinations that we haven't really thought of. There's things that people are going to do that we haven't really thought of, and like sometimes it takes some extreme cases, but most of the time it's actually just part of that sandbox fun that makes Battlefield. So I'm excited for 2042 coming out and actually getting in the hands of the players, because I think there's more opportunities in these games to find these kind of crazy moments that we necessarily didn't find in our testing, that people are just going to find when they play. So I'm looking forward to that, see what everyone can come up with, basically.
I mean, it's crazy as well, because even though there's so many of us from across DICE here in Stockholm here, and again, there's so many more of us just sat at home kind of watching this live with you guys right now. But it isn't just DICE that's helping to work and shape this new era of Battlefield. Of course, we've got So many more teams, including Dice LA, who've got some really exciting stuff to show us at EA Play, Oskar.
Yeah, I mean, first you mentioned now we have folks in Stockholm, in Gothenburg, in Guildford, in LA, and folks across all over the world, actually across Electronic Arts, helping building Battlefield 2042. But the stuff that's actually getting built out of Dice LA is quite special. The team joined our big team meeting. I think we broke some kind of Zoom world record. Lots of folks were actually in that meeting. And they got the chance to show the latest update from that experience. I think our chat kind of exploded. Yeah. The team's super pumped, and we're just looking forward to July 22nd at EA Play Live, when we get the chance to show the world what the Dice LA team have been working on. It's quite special, I'd say.
It's going to be good. I'm big time excited what our friends at Dice LA have to show you at EA Play. So make sure you stick it in your diaries. July 22nd. I promise, if you're watching this, you don't want to miss it. So Marie, Nicole, Ferris, the boss man, Dan, it's been great seeing you and chatting to you today. And of course, taking everyone a bit behind the scenes on all the work that's being done on 2042. We really do have so much more to show you. So subscribe, bang on the notifications, and from me and the gang working across 2042, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.